Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We want to give everybody a few moments to just get on, to sign on, and to be able to share. We're asking you that you would hit like. We're asking you to share this on your pages. And we're also asking you if you would start a watch party. We have a great topic for you on tonight. So we're asking if you would kindly do a watch party. I think everybody's going to be interested in our topic for tonight. Again, we always ask you to follow us at Empowerment Liberation Cathedral. And we also want you to make sure you are connected to our webpage. That is empowermentliberationcathedral.org. Somebody say it with me, empowermentliberationcathedral.org. And now we want you to follow our YouTube page. We're at Empowerment Liberation Cathedral on YouTube. And so this will be airing live on YouTube also. Once again, we want to give you a few moments to sign on and be able to share and create all of your watch parties for tonight. Please remember to follow us on Facebook at Empowerment Liberation Cathedral. Follow us even on Instagram at Empower Cathedral. Follow us on Twitter at Empower Cathedral. And then follow us on YouTube at Empowerment Liberation Cathedral. We want you to be a part of the Empowerment Liberation family. So please, please, please remember to follow us on all of those social media sites. And as I've said to you, ELC will be coming to Snapchat. So those of you who are on Snapchat, please do follow us on Snapchat. Okay. Once again, we have a great topic for you on tonight. We have some of our ELC leaders who are here to talk with you about this subject matter. And we want you to make sure that you, like I said, follow us, but create a watch party. Tonight, we have a special topic for you. All right, so tonight, we will be talking with you about justice. As you can tell from the music, justice is our topic for this evening. So please let everybody know that ELC and some of its leaders are talking about justice on tonight. And I love the fact that we all understand no justice, no peace. How many of you have said that before? No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Again, we do want you to remember to share and create a watch party. All right, so now when we talk about justice, what is justice? When we talk about that, we hear that often, but what exactly is justice? So when I looked at justice to get a definition, and in one place, I believe it was Webster's Dictionary defines it as the quality of being fair, being reasonable, just behavior or treatment. It could also mean fairness, equity. And so now, how often do we see that in America on today? Justice is the right action that should occur behind another action. Justice is a rare thing in our country on today. It's unfortunate, but it is a rare thing in the United States of America, especially for Black and brown people on today. And so when we look at justice, I have to say, we have two systems set up in America. We have two systems of justice set up in America. And so I believe we have all seen those two systems with the many murders that we have seen. When we talk about Breonna Taylor, we talk about Jacob Blake, we talk about even going back to Trayvon Martin and so many others. We can say that there are two systems set up in America. And so what are those two systems? You may ask. Those two systems, as we know, oftentimes there's a system for the Black and brown people, and there's a system for the I like to call them non-Black and brown people. All right, and so at this time, we're gonna bring our leaders onto the screen. And so tonight we have with us Deacon Kim Hall. We have Deacon Sylvester Stokes. We have Deacon Ronnie Bullock. We have the deacons, I tell you, are on tonight. And then we have Minister Catherine McKay and Page, and we have Trustee Tony Brooks. And so we have some of our leaders here with us on tonight to talk with us about justice. And so let me ask, have you all noticed that there are two systems of justice in America today? You have to come off of mute.
Well, I think you would be blind not to. I mean, that's no shade on someone who does not have sight, because even they can probably tell that there's injustice going on right now. Um, I just wanted to point out that I chose the scales behind me, the scales of justice, because I'm a Libra, and it really does fit who I am. I've always been able to see things, you know, both sides of an issue, and it really frustrates me when I see what's going on in the world right now, of how unfairly people are treated, and it's just so frustrating that other people can see it and they just let it happen. So yes, I do see the injustice going on right now.
All right, anybody else?
Of course. I mean, you know, I'm just like Deacon Kim. I mean, if you can't see it, you know, even a blind person will be able to feel the injustice in the world today. I can feel it, see it, and actually, you know, have been a product of, you know, racial profiling and things like that coming up, going to the malls with my kids, and, you know, going in certain stores, and, you know, how you all of a sudden walk in alone, and all of a sudden you got a whole band behind you, you know, people walking and marching behind you, you know, going in and out of aisles and ducking and dodging, trying to see, you know, if you're trying to steal. You know, my daughter came home with an incident like that a couple of years ago. And, you know, I mean, it's, you know, it's been going on for so long. You know, I guess now, you know, now we got the COVID, and, you know, everything's happening and people are on edge. And with, you know, the new president some years ago popped up, and now everybody is bowling, you know, out there with, you know, oh, okay, you know, the superior attitude. You understand? And how long have we been treated unjust and unfair? You know, for so long. You know, I mean, they just making it really, really, really clear today, you know, that, you know, Black lives don't matter, you know. So we have to stand strong and fight, y'all. I'm telling y'all. I mean, this is nothing new under the sun. You know, there's nothing new under the sun. It's just like, it's just coming out more, you know, just like being shown more and more and more and more and more each and every day. And just being bold behind it. That's all I say.
All right.
Minister Kat, I have to agree with you. You just brought to my mind an incident that occurred with my uncle, who was in the military back during Vietnam days. And I didn't know this until he actually passed, and I got his DD-214, I think it's called, which showed that they actually put in writing that they didn't feel like he needed to be a person who they should give classes to, computer classes to, because he was a product of an environment, let's say, you know, that was of a lower class. And so they actually put it in writing that, you know, they did not feel like it was necessary to give him these classes because he was never going to progress. He was never going to be able to step up any higher in the chain of command that he was in. But a really good friend of his, who was a white guy, was able to progress and go on and become, you know, a major, a captain, and, you know, in the ranks. And my uncle never progressed past private because they would not give him the classes that he wanted to take. And so, yes, this feeling of injustice in the two systems that we have for, you know, people of color and people who are non-color, that there are definitely two systems for us. And it's unfortunate because I saw this and it took me aback when I read this, that they actually, they actually put it in writing in his file that, because of the product, he was going to be a product of his environment. He would never progress beyond, what he already had established. And I went, my God, this is a guy who was willing to give his life, for his country. And this is what his country thought of him. And so, yes, we still are dealing with that. 50 years later, we're still dealing with the same issues that we had 400 years ago, 300 years ago, 100 years ago. The difference is, I think now, is that, this generation is really putting forth that we do have value. And if it wasn't for us, a lot of the things that you see around you would not exist. And so I think that's part of the change, the sea change, that I hope that we can continue taking this tidal wave and moving it forward and pushing the needle a little bit further and a little bit further each generation as we come. But I don't think this generation is going to wait. I think they need to see some change now. So hopefully that will occur.
And Deacon Sylvester, I know you want to say something. Saying something, piggybacking off of you, Tony, is that remember being in school and saying that about education really breaks my heart, because I know I love kids and I'm all about education and them getting equal justice and fair laws when it comes to education. I remember being in school and make a mistake, not even to make a mistake, because my art class was down in the basement, right? And that's where they had all the special education kids at, or all the kids that needed services. They put them in one area. That bothered me so much. You understand what I'm saying? And I bet you if we use the statistics to find out how many of those children was targeted for prison, you understand, just because they had that on their educational background, or they had retardation, and, it wasn't all the 504 plans and stuff like that coming up. It was like, mental retardation, or they was bad kids, and, all this stuff like that. And then look at how many of them had went to the prison system, or, if we tally up those statistics. And I'm saying that because when I went to take my son was struggling in school, and they wanted to give him some services, whatever, talking about he may need to be in a special education class, whatever. I said, no, you're not going to do that. You're not going to do that to my Black son. What you're going to do is give my son some related services. My son is not going in nobody's basement. My son is not going to be secluded from his class. Y'all better work the system out quick. So that's when inclusion came about, because many people, and I told everybody, they got to come up with something, because I bet you in the white law section, you don't hear about like they kids got it. You understand? But when I went to school and I had to work with these young people, there are a lot of them that was on medication, wouldn't know about it, but they display our kids. You understand? With Ritalin and all that stuff like that. They made sure that they told the statistics about our Black young men and women, boys and girls, So they had inclusion. We didn't know nothing about it. If we turned blind when we went to those special education meetings and we don't read those private practice laws, if we don't do all that, when we send our children off to school, they're going to categorize them. They're going to put them in different areas. They're going to separate them, and they're going to make them feel that you cannot learn. And then they put them in class with 90% of the kids who have behavioral issues, who are acting up. So your kid who don't have the behavior issue, but does have the issue of catching up and may have some delays in certain areas, they can't learn. They can't do nothing. They just sitting there because the teacher can't teach. Teacher walking out the classroom crying and breaking down. We have to be involved. We have to read the fine print before we hand our kids off to folks. You understand? And I'm saying that because it's passionate to me. So go ahead, Deacon Sylvester, do your thing.
Let me get to Deacon Sylvester so we can move to the next thing.
Right. So what I was going to say is that, this injustice sometimes is very blatant. But then again, it could be wrapped up in a very nice package with a nice bow on it, and you can't tell that it's injustice. But it's even as small as, is as large as when you go through getting a loan. There's a lot of injustice when it's pertaining to people of color. I'm sure if you were to do a survey and an audit on credit unions and banks in terms of the loan percentages in terms of approval, with people of color versus non, absolutely different. But in a small scale, if some people would consider this small, just thinking about driving. I had an incident one time ago where I was driving and my light for my license plate was out. Now, I was in an area that was pretty rural, and, of course, this truck drives by, headlight out. It's during the day, almost dark, but, you can still see light. Police pulled me over. I was like, here's this truck. And of course, the driver of the truck was a white guy. I was like, how could you not see this big light not being out? And you're looking at this little tail light over my tag that I would never even know it was out now unless somebody else is driving my car and I'm walking behind it, and so it's as small as that. But yeah, you could see it. It's obvious sometimes, and sometimes it's just wrapped up in a nice little package. And you're kind of like, is that really it? Yeah, it is.
Well, I do want to say that it's obvious oftentimes to Black people, but whites, it is not as obvious to them. So I don't want us to just blanket the statement and say that it's very obvious, because it's not obvious to everybody. And that's why we have the challenges that we do in America on today. But I want to say that in America, people are being penalized for being poor. And so we do know that the Supreme Court has ruled that you cannot penalize people for being poor in America on today. But we do see penalties coming in different ways for people who are poor in America, or not necessarily poor, but marginalized or disenfranchised in America on today. So I want to talk about one of those ways in which we see the chains being placed upon, once again, mostly Black and brown people. Every now and then we have a couple of other folks who are in there, but I want to say it's mostly Black and brown people. There's a system called the private bail bond company. Anybody heard of private bail bondsmen? And so with the private bail bondsmen, we know most of the time people deal with them for pre-trial reasons. And so pre-trial money is big business in America today. That's why people go into being a bail bondsman. And so 10% is oftentimes what people are asked to pay, sometimes even up to 20% if you cannot make the full bail. So now if bail is set at, let's just say, $100,000, how many people just have $100,000 liquid cash sitting around in the bank to pay for their bail until they go to have their court date? Okay, not a lot of Black and brown people have $100,000 sitting around. And so when you talk about that, then you have to go and get a bail bondsman, and that bail bondsman charges you between 10 and 20%. And so those who have to go and come up with 10 and 20%, oftentimes they are forced to agree to predatory type contracts, which have astronomical interest rates. And then oftentimes it takes people years to pay that off. People put their houses up, they put all kinds of things up to come up with this money. And so again, these types of things are putting people in bondage, while the folks who are privileged, who have the 100,000, maybe 200,000, whatever it is, sitting in the bank, they oftentimes are able to put that money up and get that money back. Even if they're found to be guilty, they get it back. So let's talk about that whole bail bond system. Anybody have any comments on that system? Because basically that is, to me, a ball and chain system, because until you can manage to pay that off, you still are in bondage to whoever you had to make that agreement with.
Bishop, I think when, people get processed through the system, it's an unfair at the moment that the incident occurs, and the confrontation with the police. And I don't want to use the word confrontation, but the impact of having that conversation with the police officer at that moment, and you're taken into the system, all bets are off as far as how you're going to be treated as a person of color versus someone who's not. And, looking again across the spectrum, you can see that, if you have to go into the system and how bail is assessed on people of color versus the majority population. You can see the difference. There's a distinct disparity. When you look at the number of people who are in jail, we are the minorities, but we are the majority people who are in jail.
Absolutely.
And we can't get out because as you stated, we cannot afford to pay a bail bondsman the 10%, the 5%, the 1%, no percent can we afford. And the infraction may have been, you jaywalked, or, you had a disagreement with, your family member, and you were taken to jail. You were processed through the system, and all of a sudden your whole world is upside down because of one incident and one, disagreement, and now you're stuck and you have to wait. And sometimes, you can't be seen, before the judge, and if they take you in on a Friday, you will not see a judge until Monday,
Right.
And you're in the system for a whole weekend. And during that time, your whole life can change because you don't know who you're going to meet inside. And those things that you thought that you knew about your life can all of a sudden change in an instant. And no, I can't afford to get, can't afford to buy or pay a high priced lawyer, to get me out. I can't afford the bail, and I can't afford the lawyer. So now I'm stuck with, the public defender who's tired and has 1,000 cases, and you're just one of tens of thousands of cases that they're dealing with. And so the whole process, needs to be, upended and rebuilt and retooled, because it is built to make sure that there is a population of people for free labor. And if you read some of the, the information about why prisons were built, you can see that there's a distinct correlation between the number of Black people that are incarcerated and the labor that they're used for, versus the people who can go through the system and get out really quickly because they have the resources. And it's about resources. And when you don't have it, you're kind of stuck, and I'm not going to get into the whole diatribe about, why prisons were built. But if you read some history about prisons in America and why they were built.
Well, we know the prison today is a new plantation. And
Correct.
So if you look at any of that, what they're doing, how they're doing it, and it's basically they have revised their strategy since we were able to no longer have to pick cotton and no longer be able to help pad their pockets, no longer able to offer free labor where they just provide us. I wouldn't even say it was a house, because when I go back and see those, when you look at in those museums and places like that, that wasn't even a house. It was just a shelter, and it wasn't really, I guess it was considered food, but it wasn't a good quality of food. They just gave you the scraps. Then, since they don't have to do that anymore, they still are looking for a way to get something for nothing. And so what happened is, from the way I have understood it and viewed it, is they just got a new commodity. And they got a new way of bringing you all back on the plantation, not people who are here, but some of our brown and Black people and a few whites who got caught up in whatever. But, the prison system, they're making a lot of money off the prison system. That's why they're moving to privatization. They're building so many nice prison systems so they can add more and more people so that, people's pockets can be padded even more. And it's unfortunate because, the laws and stuff are being designed. That's why we have to get out and vote, because people are designing laws to make sure that African-American people especially get caught up in some of these things, and they can put you in prison and have free labor off of you for many years. And once again, pad the pockets of the white man and whoever else has invested with them in these prison complexes. And it's unfortunate today that, so many people still don't see it. Some of the young Black people look at going to prison. When I was living in Detroit, the young Black people looked at going to prison as a status. It was something good. You could say you had been to prison, and they gave the people respect who had been to prison. And you know, that's not the right mentality we want for our young people today. But a lot of them do have that mentality, as you know, you done served your time, I got respect for you. And that's not what we want. Anybody want to contribute to that? Because we did stray to that. So you can either talk about, I want y'all to stay on topic. We can either talk about the prison system, or we can talk about the private bail bond, because I want to go back to something else. Anybody?
Well, you know, ever since Trump, let's say that, came into office, um, I've been noticing that Black history that we weren't taught is coming into the forefront. Like it's actually making me pay attention, because history has always been my weakest subject. But now I'm finding it more interesting because it's being presented in a different way. And I actually read about the prison, how the prison system came to be. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is horrible. How they would just pick up, just make up little petty things on Black men and just give them these enormous sentences that they couldn't pay or anything, and just to put them in jail for free labor. And I'm thinking, this is still what's going on today, because you see someone who's white gets sentenced for something and they get like this. And then you see the Black person, he gets, 10 years for something so silly. And it's just because they need that labor. The prisons are producing things that we're buying, and they're paying people like a quarter an hour or something like that to produce it. So yeah, the prisons. And then when I heard that prisons were getting ready to be privatized, like they're trying to make prisons private enterprise, it's scary. That is scary, because now, sentences for even just shoplifting a bag of potato chips could be 5 years, Yeah. So that the privatization of prisons is very scary to me.
Yeah. And when you look at privatization, you have to know that these deep pocket persons may either collaborate or do it on their own to get these prison systems. And then what's going to happen is they're going to put their lobbyists out to lobby those Republican and probably some Democratic senators and representatives to put certain laws in place that will then be the tunnel or the avenue in which the police and the systems can put Blacks and brown people in jail for, once again, small things, stuff that, is ridiculous. And they let white folks walk all day long from it. But Black people will have to go to prison, not just jail, but they'll go to prison and spending many years of their life offering time because of the color of their skin. And it is really unfortunate. And we really do need people to get this, but people are not getting it.
The other thing that you have to realize too on the same topic is, the federal judges who are being appointed to those positions, who may be, far right leaning, and, also are in that group, who know that we need a free source of labor. And so when these, people come in front of them, they will definitely put you in for 10 years, like as Kim said, for stealing a bag of potato chips. And all of a sudden, you're in jail for 10 years because of the types of judges that are sitting on these courts. So that's another thing, another layer to this. And I'm sorry to get away from your original topic, but the bail is a cog in this wheel of injustice in the prison system and in a society. It's another symptom of what we're dealing with as a society as a whole. So the bail bondsman and the getting a private bail bonds person to even reduce his rate, because it's 10% and up to 20%, I think is what. Mm-hmm. So again, it's like, so you've got nothing but, all of these avenues to push you into the system, but nothing really to get the obstacles out of the way for you not to have to send, or not to have to go into the prison system and go into the system and go into the system for years for something as nominal as a $1.50 bag of potato chips. I mean, literally, your entire life has been ruined.
And,
But voting is important as well. This whole thing that we're talking about is in voting, because the judges that are sitting on some of these courts, it's
have been voted for. They have been elected. Yeah. And let me just add this. Some of the people who are in prison today went there as young people, young adults. Maybe something happened. The young African American said something to the white girl, and he ended up going to prison. And he's spending 20, 30 years in prison because somebody didn't want this black boy talking to this white girl. Some people are in prison because of marijuana, which is legal in so many places today, but they just had some marijuana in their car. And so you have people who are in prison for long sentences for what we consider today to be something very small, and sometimes even things that society has come to accept. But they're still spending time in prison and still offering almost free labor, because 25 cents is nothing for somebody to make in a day.
Yeah, I mean, I just read this story about some guy who's been in jail since he was like 18 or something, and he got sentenced to like a couple of life terms and plus 100 years or something for shoplifting. And I was like, what? And it was just, I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is, it's talking about the prisons. When I see these cell phone videos of things that happen, I see a lot of times where the police instigate an event. They instigate it so that they can bring the charges of resisting arrest, assault, police officer, all this stuff, so that they can put these people in prison, because they know how the judges and juries feel about assault and police officers and things like this. But you always heard about it, but now that we're capturing it like everywhere now, it's opened up the eyes of people who didn't see it before. They've been saying it for a long time, but now you can see it because it's being recorded.
And I think seeing changes everything. Seeing helps people to get it. Because once again, we go back to Emmett Till, we understand that the people, once they saw the inhumane treatment of this young black boy, and how he was beat to death, and how half of his face was gone, and how they had left his body in the water to try to hide him. But he was beat just because he supposedly whistled at somebody. And so when you look at the level of injustice and hatred that brings about the violence in people, it oftentimes does not really get people's attention. It doesn't get people's attention until they actually see it. So people, when they see it, then they can get a better understanding of the injustice, the hatred, the violence that is occurring. And so until we've got to see those videos, people said, oh, okay, yeah, I've heard about it. But when they start seeing it for themselves and seeing how hatred is still prevailing in our country, then that's when you had people begin to talk about it and begin to want to do something different and see how we can change some of the laws. We've always had people advocating, always had people wanting to change the laws, but it wasn't until massive amounts of people started to watch these videos that more people said, I've got to do something, I've got to say something. But the next area I want to talk about is also another area of injustice, is the DMV and the Secretary of State offenses. Now, we look at, first of all, people who are poor don't have as we just heard, money to pay the bail. They don't have money to pay for a lot of infractions that occur. And so people can lose their driver's license for not being able to afford court fees, court costs. And so now when you can't have your driver's license because you can't afford to pay, then there's a ripple down effect. Okay, so what's now the effect that occurs from not being able to have a driver's license anymore? First of all, you have no identification. Oftentimes, if you're looking for a job, now you can't get one because you can't really prove who you are. And then if you're looking for a place to stay, you can't prove who you are once again. And so then now we are promoting once again this whole cycle of poverty. You know, and I remember in Michigan, there were some fees that they would assess on people, and they would continue to assess the fees until they would become excessive. And the people that were marginalized, disenfranchised, just said, I'll never get a license again. And I'm just going to have to drive my car and not have a license and take a chance, take a risk. Well, that's the worst thing that you can do, because usually that's when the police are going to stop you and pull you over because you don't have a license. And then they're going to find out. Then they're going to bring you in for driving without a license, you know. And so it's just a cycle. It's a vicious cycle. So somebody talk about those fees that are assessed and that to me are excessive, you know, to the point where it just puts you so far under and so far deep in debt that really, unless somebody steps in and helps you, it's really no way out of that.
Well, being the commercial driver of the group, I've seen where people who work for us, they get one ticket, and now that ticket prevents them from working because, you know, you can't have they can't pay it, you can't work. And the unwillingness of the system to make payment plans and things like this from the beginning is just, you know, I don't understand it. If I come to you and I say, I can't pay this ticket, can we work something out before you suspend my license? You know, come on, you know. And then the fact that in some places, and I know DC is one, where parking tickets apply to your driver's license, which is crazy. It's not a moving violation. Why should it apply to your driver's license? I've seen so many people who go to Virginia, you know, to get certain things because now that this is messed up in DC, whatever, you know, it's just like, why does the system set people up like this? You got a city where you can't park. Now you get a parking ticket and it applies to your driver's license. That's crazy.
Yeah, but once again, it's a system and a cycle, and it's going to keep certain people out.
Yeah.
And oftentimes those are the Black and brown people.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Bishop, you spoke about, you know, the excessive fees and fines that are assessed on your license. You know, for instance, a lot of times you have this cycle again of Black men who, you know, have kids, and when they don't pay their child support, their licenses get suspended or revoked, and they can't afford, if they couldn't afford the child support, you know, they can't afford the fees. And if the fees start to get compounded,
Yeah.
then how do you ever get out of this cycle? How do you ever get out of how do you ever get yourself dug out of the hole? You know, yes. Did you create the hole for yourself? Yes. You know, having kids and not being able to support all your kids, you know, that's an issue. And that is another systemic issue that we have in a lot of the Black and brown cultures that, you know, that you see. But again, why do we have these systems in place where we're not helping people, but we're penalizing people instead of educating people to say, hey, you know, maybe you don't want to have, you know, a bunch of kids because, you know, you're going to have to pay child support. And if you don't pay your child support, we're going to penalize you some more. and take away your license. And if you drive Uber or any other, system like a job like that, where your license is your livelihood, you're not going to be able to do it. I mean, I know a lot of people came over, from other countries to drive cabs here, right?
Yeah.
And, if they get caught up in the system, that's really the only job that they could get here, is to be able to drive, right? And so again, if you get this excessive penalties layered on top of one another, and I don't see the flip side of that, where the education is. So how do you educate someone not to go down this road? How do you educate someone to be better stewards of their own livelihoods? Because if you get caught up, there's almost no way to get back. Like once you're in it, you can't win. It is a system of failure. It is a system set up to cause failure. And the money that people spend trying to get out of it is like you never win, because you're always, as they say, the classic statement, you're always robbing Peter to pay Paul. And literally you start robbing Peter, to pay Paul. And it's an unfortunate system that we have. It's hard to get, once you get started, you can't really get out of it.
Absolutely. Who else wants
Well,
to
I was just going to say, unfortunately, the system is a system that's set up as a double whammy, if you will, or a triple and sometimes quadruple whammy. And so when we look at these different layers of punishment, if you will, and so if we talk about not being able to pay your fee and then your license removed, means you can't work, but it also means that at some point they're going to arrest you, which is going back to the original statement about prison and that whole setup. And so you're absolutely right, Tony, for some people in some situations, there's no way out. So how do you avoid it in the beginning? And that's a hard question, because everybody's not at the same starting point and everybody doesn't have the same resources. So what do you do?
Right. And as I said in the beginning or earlier, the Supreme Court has ruled on numerous occasions that you cannot penalize a person for being poor and unable to pay. And so it has been suggested that you do set up payment systems, but a lot of these areas are ignoring the law that says you should offer payment systems for a person who can demonstrate that they're unable to pay. And so, unfortunately, you hear folks always talking about law and order. Well, y'all not following the laws anyhow, because, y'all are not trying to help those who are not able to do something different in these particular situations. And so, when people set up payment plans, sometimes they're able to stick to them, sometimes they're not. And that's because, something else may have happened. We don't know, but we want to always make sure, as we said, that we vote and make sure that we can vote for people who are putting the laws in place, but who also, we want to vote for those who will be the judge when we have to come into the court system. For those people in Prince George's County, most people hate to go in that court system in Prince George's County, okay? And so a lot of folks hate to go in the court system in Fairfax, Virginia. And so it's just known how you're going to come out in many instances if you are of Black and brown hue. Okay. And so that means that we got to start voting that some other folks can be the ones sitting on the bench who may give us a fairer chance when it comes to court. Now, when we talk about the gentrification, wealth-based management housing, once again, I think that there's a justice issue there. And, we know that in many urban cities across America, there has been a move to gentrify those inner cities. And so what has happened is they have priced the people who are Black and brown, who are of a certain, I want to say a certain income base. They have priced those people out and made it where they no longer can afford to stay in certain places. And then also, what has happened is they've come in and made certain rules about what you have to do if you're going to live in a certain area. And that is more money that needs to be paid out. And if you don't follow those things, then you'll be ticketed and other things, and it kind of will force you out of that particular area. And many people know those laws are designed to force you out and make sure that people of a certain income level are not staying in certain areas. So let's talk about that, because we've seen gentrification in the District of Columbia. We've seen it in many urban cities. I know we've seen it in Chicago. We've seen it in Detroit. We've seen it in Atlanta, seen it in many of your large cities, Los Angeles. You've seen it in many of your large cities across America, New York. So let's talk about how they are moving people out and only wanting certain income, people of certain income levels in certain areas.
Bishop, I'll take that on. Being a native New Orleanian, after Katrina, my mother grew up in what was called a low economic area, right? And it had been that way for years, but I mean, it was a very tight knit community. People took care of each other. People looked out for each other. And so, we didn't know the difference between rich, poor, other than, today, if my grandmother got her check, we could get 2 pieces of candy. And, when she didn't get her check, well, you might only get 1, right? Or none. But what they've done now is, in that area, they've bulldozed these buildings that were the only buildings that saved people's lives during Katrina. These are the only buildings that did not get blown over and completely flooded. And they bulldozed them and created these new housing areas that people literally could not afford. And I know the last time that I went through there, and I kept seeing people who are not of my hue anymore, and people of a different hue living in these areas, and the homes that were built there. And I said, there's no way that the people that I knew growing up could afford to live here, right? And houses that used to go for $65,000 or $70,000, now are $400,000 and $500,000. And I'm thinking to myself, how could any of these people, and most of the people who work in New Orleans are in the tourism industry. I mean, so they're in, they're in the hospitality industry. So hospitality people don't make a lot of money, so they can't afford a $400,000 or $500,000 house, and so they moved them out and brought in other people. And unfortunately, and I see it in the district as well, how places in Southeast DC, they're moving people out. They're building these nice apartment complexes with the grocery stores and the high-end grocery stores and different entertainment centers that people cannot afford to go to. The only thing that they can afford to do is come there and clean the building. That's what that's the only job. That's the only way that they would be able to get inside those buildings. And I think that we continue to to see this erosion of the Black dollar. We're not spending the money and not saving the money the way that we should or could, so that we could then build those places. Black Wall Street was a real thing back in the day, and we need to kind of try to bring some of that back and bring some of that mindset back, so that our dollars are worth as much as anybody else's dollar, because we spend a lot in the in the economy, but we don't get a lot back. And so again, this whole cycle of the system being set up so that we do not get a bite at the apple. The only thing that we are able to do is pick the apple and give it to somebody else. We don't get to bite off of it. And so I think that's an unfortunate measure to look at when you look at how Black people have progressed. And have we done better? Yes. And have we progressed from when I was, coming up in the 60s? Yes, we have. But at the end of the day, we're still not nearly where we should be or could be because of the systems that are in place to degrade, the value of the Black and brown person.
Exactly. And I just wanted to add, there have been studies done that show how long the dollar remains in the Black community, how long it remains in the white community, how long it remains in the Jewish community. Well, Black folks release their money, like I forget if it was within a day or two. And so Blacks don't hold on to their money that long. And the Jewish people hold on, they hold their money. I believe it was at least about 20 to 30 days. And so I'll check those numbers or somebody inbox me, but I do remember reading it some years ago. But I do know the Blacks, when you talk about African Americans specifically, are the lowest to when you talk about holding the dollar. And so we are spenders. Everybody knows that we're spenders. We are consumers. And that's why the people mark us. Sometimes it makes me angry, upset. My wife tells me don't use the word angry. So I'm gonna use the word upset in case she's watching. Sometimes it makes me upset. That's the therapist, okay, in her. But sometimes it makes me upset to see the Chinese folks marketing to the Black people. Now, when the Asians start cooking fried chicken, and when they start cooking greens and peas and all of this stuff, but they are smart enough to know this is your consumer base. If you want to make some money, sit your store right in their neighborhood, and they will be in there no matter how you treat them, no matter how you talk to them, and no matter how much you let them know that you don't like their race and you discriminate boldly oftentimes against them. They're still going to come in and support your business. And so, it's just unfortunate that that is reality in America today. So anybody else want to talk about the gentrification, Minister Cat, Deacon Sylvester?
Well, growing up in Brooklyn, New York, Flatbush, Brownsville, Broadway, it was, always us there and lived there and could afford to live there. And I remember going back home for my brother's funeral and downtown Flatbush. Everybody who knows New York, Flatbush Avenue was like, it was our shopping center. We went down there and we wasn't but a few Black bars down there and clubs and stuff like that. And that's where we shopped. And now it looked like a mini Manhattan when I went back down there. I'm telling you, they have the big super Target and everything going on down there. I mean, all kind of theaters, and the lights are so bright. I mean, it looks like Broadway. And that's because a lot of them had moved us out and put a lot of, those folks in that can afford it. I mean, lofts, they didn't have no lofts, The brownstone buildings was up in like Brownsville and up there in Madison and off of DeKalb and stuff. But it's I was like so shocked when I went back home. I was like, oh, y'all doing it up. I mean, we had to drive all the way to Long Island to get a nice, not BBQs, some of the restaurants that they have down there now, like Dave and Buster's and all those places. We had to drive our kids way out of town and go do that. And now they have it there. So you can tell the difference in the neighborhood, even in my neighborhood in Brownsville, East New York, a lot of, Caucasian people that moved in, and I'm like, oh, okay. So the buildings are being sold to other folks and they're doing new things and they're moving a lot of people out. You understand? A lot of people are being evicted, and they do a lot of things that's unjust to get people out, so they can get these buildings fixed up and make more money off of them and put different stores and things in the area. I was surprised, I was like, it doesn't look the way it used to look. So.
Yes, thank you. And that's the sentiment of many people when they go back to their hometown and they see how it has changed and they wonder where Pookie and Ray Ray are. and they have to find out that Pookie and Ray Ray have been moved, and even the homeless person has been moved. Okay. And so that is a part of the gentrification and the wealth based management system that is occurring in America. You know, I have to say, when I was at Howard University and they showed Spike Lee's movie, you know, he said, wake up, wake up. You know, we still got to tell folks they need to wake up today, because you got to know all of the stuff that is in the undercurrent, what is happening that really is not being said, but is being done. And so what is being done that's going to impact you and, you know, get you caught up in a system that you may not be able to get out of. And we know, like I started out by saying, justice, we don't see that too often in America on today. We have so many people that we're still asking for justice for, so many things that we're still asking for justice about. And so we have to know that, you know, we've got to pay attention, and we've got to get our people elected, and we got to get some other folks in higher offices that can help to make a difference and change some of the things that are going on in America on today. The last one, I know we're running out of time. The last one I want to talk about is another system that is not a just system in America. And I think we kind of hinted on it, but I want to go back to it because I had it on my list to talk about, is probation fees. Now, instead of using government, once again, to handle those persons who are on probation and parole, private companies are being used to deal with those who are on parole and probation. And so now with those private companies, they're not concerned about rehabilitation. Okay, the prison system, I would say, got away from rehabilitation too, but initially that's what they were supposed to be about. The penal system was supposed to be to rehab persons. But as we heard, it was really just about getting free labor from the African American people in a legal manner. Okay. And so now these private companies have no desire to rehab anybody. But what is going on now is that instead of the initial, I guess, written down policies, which was to help people to be able to find jobs, help people to be able to find housing, help people to reunify with their families, you know, those things that were supposed to be happening are not a concern for these private companies. They simply want to assess fees. One of our members recently had told me, I guess about a year ago, that their probation officer was needing them to pay a certain amount of money, or they was being threatened with going back to jail. I was like, why are you having to pay any money? I just couldn't understand that. But they were being threatened to come up with a certain amount of money, and the person was still looking for a job. And the person had explained to the probation officer that they were looking for a job. And so what they do is they threaten to put you back in jail if you cannot pay certain amounts of money. And so now, once again, here we are in this same cycle where you're being penalized for not having money. And so there's so many Black and brown people who are disenfranchised, who are marginalized, who are undereducated, and we just simply are not able to make some of these dollar commitments that the system wants us to make. And so therefore, if you're unable to make those, then they put you back in prison, put you back in jail, and then have you in the system to make free money off of you. Okay, anybody want to talk about that? Because once again, we're causing these people, this system is causing people to be impoverished and causing people, once again, not to be able to pay their child support, because if you're locked up, how are you going to pay your child support? Okay, if you're locked up, how are you going to be able to go to work? And so, you know, there's so many things that ripple down with these types of things that happen. And so really, I think somebody said it, there's no way out of this system. Deacon Sylvester.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you just, in your explanation, you took some of my words, but that's great too. But I'm thinking probation fee. And so most of the time you're out of jail, you're either at your home or you're in a rooming home, you're on public transportation, you're looking for a job. If you get a job, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a minimum wage job, because depending on why you were in, some employers may hire you, some of them may not. And so even the little bit of pie that you're making, they want to take part of that. And then God forbid, if you're the breadwinner of the family and you need your money to help support your family, but yet a portion of that is going away, it's something's wrong with that picture. You know.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Anybody else? Deacon Kim.
Well, just what you said, piggybacking on that, is that when you come out of jail on probation, now you have to get a job. Now people don't want to hire you, so the system should have, a list of employers who would hire you, some way to get back on your feet. But when you keep getting the door slammed in your face, then that's going to make you just, some people, and I have known a few people who said, I'd rather go back to jail, because you get what they call three hots in a cot. I mean, they set it up that way. Like, they just like, I'd just rather go back to jail because nobody want to hire me. They're going to send me back anyway. So, and they would just rather just de-stress and go back to jail because it's less stressful. So, I mean, the system should have a way where when you come out on probation, you set them up with some job counseling, way to get hired, way to get back on your feet, but they don't do that, So once again, there you go. There's the injustice again.
Right.
I know this.
For a minute, going. The recidivism rate is high because people, like you said, would rather go back to prison where things are given to them. Oftentimes we're asking them to go and try to break down walls that are already set up to not let them in. So therefore, the recidivism rate is often very high. But also, we have to have lawmakers who will get companies, employers to ban the box. One of the problems was people were judging you if you had been to prison, as if you were going to try to do something horrible to them, or you were not worthy of being employed. So anytime you check the box and say, yes, I have a felony, or yes, I've, been to jail, been to prison, then they automatically said you weren't going to be hired. And so, the system once again was set up against the people who really needed to be able to work, to thus be able to then get back on their feet and be restored to society. Minister Cat.
Yeah, I knew this guy coming up, and he had a child when he was in high school. And the thing was, when he got out of high school and everything, he's supposed to have paid child support. And because he didn't have like college education, anything, and he was only able to get these, nickel and dime jobs, trying to get on his feet, still trying to put himself through college to take care of a kid that's now 3 or 4 years old, and it was so sad for him because, and he was a good friend of mine. And then all of a sudden he was not able to do what he needed to do to get back on his feet, like y'all said. And then all of a sudden he got himself in some trouble, started trying to sell some drugs, went to jail because they wanted him. They was going to revoke his license. They was going to do all these other things. And, and people find themselves that, I mean, even kids I work with, find themselves in those positions. And you would think that they would change the laws after this time. They don't. So then it becomes a revolving door for them, because once you go to jail and you have a felony or any charges, even people say you have a record, you went to jail before, people shun you. They don't care what you went to jail for now. Okay, well, this person ain't trustworthy because this person went to jail. You can be jaywalking and go to jail, because they feel like locking you up, they want to lock you up. So, it makes it hard. It becomes that revolving door, like Kim says, well, okay, well, I'm in the system now and I might as well just ride it, and they just, go all out. It takes hope away from our Black men and women that's trying to make a difference or that's trying to get up on their feet. Because some people just go and do something one time and they learn their lesson from it. They want to get their life together, but they make it so hard for them to turn over that leaf to walk the straight and narrow. And, like Kim said, the laws has to change. The laws has to change, and it has to change to be fair laws. fair laws, not white laws, not black laws, but fair laws for everybody. And you say justice for all, where is it? You know?
And it's unfortunate, but these are just a few of the things that are set up that keep our Black and brown people, especially African Americans, in an impoverished cycle. And it's a vicious cycle that oftentimes does not let the person be able to come out of it. They just get deeper and deeper and deeper in this poverty hole. And so we want to know that once again, it's difficult to come out of the cycle of poverty in America. And so, what can we do? We can go out and vote, and we can elect people who have compassion and who have a heart and who have a platform and maybe have some ideas about ways to help people to come out of some of these systems and to be able to break the ball and chain that is around these people's ankles and that are around their foot. And, you know, there's a book, The New Jim Crow. I would say somebody find that and read that. I can't think of the author's name at the moment, but I have heard her talk about the book before back in Detroit. And so, you know, so many of these things are still present, but just under a new name on today. They have a new face. Like we talked about the Ku Klux Klan being part of the police force. So they have a new uniform. And so, you know, we have to understand that these things are still happening in America today. They just have changed their outer casing. They're changed their outer look so that, you know, people won't recognize them as easily. And so we want to make sure that we're voting. We want to make sure that we're encouraging other people to vote. And we want to make sure that we do our part to speak out against injustice. Somebody has a last minute statement.
Yeah, so you can get the new Jim Crow book off of Amazon for $13.23 by Michelle Alexandra.
Yeah, Alexandra. Yes, thank you, thank you.
And the last thing that I want to tell you, Bishop, is that you were talking about this, how long the dollar circulates in the Black community and in other communities. So our dollars stay in our community for 6 hours.
Oh, it's hours. That's what it is.
In the white community, it stays 17 days. In the Jewish community, it stays 20 days. And in the Asian community, it stays 30 days. Think about that. 6 hours.
6 hours.
30 days.
I knew it was quick, but I didn't know it was hours. Okay.
Yeah, 6 hours.
Wow.
So that just goes to show you that we have to get a different mindset and start recirculating. And here's the thing, if we start recirculating our dollars inside our own communities, you'll see change within the community, because if we can support each other as the Asian community or the Jewish community support each other, if we could learn that model and how to do that within our own communities, you would see some of these systems break down. Absolutely. And we could see some of these things start to shift and to change. But we have to change our mindset and get over the trauma of being victims, and come out and be, resilient and say that, I'm a survivor and I'm a winner, and that's the mindset that we need to change. That was my last thought.
Okay, thank you. Well, we are out of time. I will present my scriptures on next week, but we want to talk about justice all this month. We're going to have panels to talk about some other justice issues, because we need to know what's really going on in our country. And so, one of the ones I wanted to highlight, y'all can go back and look at it, the Psalm 140:12. I know that the Lord will maintain the cause of the afflicted and will execute justice for the needy. And so somebody needs God to execute justice on today. And so, I just want us to be mindful and to be aware of what's really going on with our brothers and sisters in America. And then we'll know why people have been protesting. We'll know why people have been standing up and speaking out. We'll know why people feel a need to go and speak before Congress. And we'll know why people are trying to get out the vote on November 3rd. And so we cannot just vote on the presidential level. We have to vote in our city and county and state level for all of those people as well. So let us make sure that we also look at all of the amendments and know what those mean and how they will impact us and impact our community. So we got to get some voter education. And so we got to begin to take this upcoming election very seriously, because lives are going to be impacted if it goes the way if it continues the way it's been going the last 4 years. All right. And so we want to give y'all some music once again as we get ready to go. Once again, please remember to follow Empowerment Liberation Cathedral on Facebook. We want you to follow us on Instagram, Empower Cathedral. We want you to follow us on Twitter, Empower Cathedral, and make sure you connect with our webpage, empowermentliberationcathedral.org. Thank you to all of our ELC leadership who participated on the panel on today. And please remember to share this post, create a watch party, and let everybody know